Before I begin, I just want to mention the development overnight, which have raised the prospects of a ceasefire and an end to the Israeli genocide in Gaza. And I hope for a peace that is lasting and one that brings justice and freedom to the Palestinian people. Stampa in a gale gach liana dan budget seo a bhí fáilsí de March budget a chréigean daoine a te gobar honera a thuirtífa siad a te ar an bhair. Ní léon churann seo a gobhniú dún na an méid galtnas na galtnas an móra a rinne tú héin mar thánaiste ma óhiú cain income tailí mac léin agus cuirim leanaí iad a league breiste agad. Tánaiste 48 hours have passed since you introduced your budget, and I hope that the real shock, that the real anger of working people and families is starting to register with you. They've spent the last 2 days shaking their heads in disbelief at what you served up on Tuesday. A budget that abandons workers to look after those at the top. And this budget has Fine Gael's stamp on every page of it. A budget that shows up for developers, for landlords, for investors, and leaves workers behind. It's like that you sat down before the budget and looked and said to yourself, how many of these election promises that I made, how many do you think I can break in this budget? Because that's what you did. And I want to address some of the broken promises that you yourself made. The first one on income tax. You said, I believe we can do about 1.4 billion each year in tax measures over the next 5 years, and that will be made up of both changes to income thresholds and also changing the entry points to various USC bands. That's you speaking to the Irish Times in November last year, 1 week before the election. You broke that promise on Tuesday. And one of the largest tax-cutting packages in the history of the state, at a time when it was never more needed. You couldn't even give ordinary workers a single cent in an income tax boost. You betrayed Taoiseach over 2.5 million workers, and that's on you. But you did find the money for big tax breaks for developers and for landlords, and it says everything about your priorities. The second broken promise that you delivered on Tuesday is on student fees. You said, I think we really need to phase out third-level fees. I have strong views on that. That's you speaking on social media in November last year, just 2 weeks before the election. So what happened, Taoiseach? How can you phase out student fees when you're asking parents and students to pay €500 more this year than they paid last year? Because that's what you did in this budget. And no matter how hard you try and spin, and you'll try and do it again, I've no doubt about it, you said you had their backs. You said that you had the backs of the students of Ireland, but you have double-crossed them. That's what you've done. Another broken promise. And the third one, on childcare costs. Speaking to the Irish Independent in October last year, just a month before the election, you pledged to deliver €200 per month childcare and that you would do it quickly. Here's what you said. I actually believe the cost bit we can deliver quite quickly. I believe it can be delivered in the early time of the government. Fine Gael pledged to produce an action plan on childcare costs within the first 100 days of government. We're now in day 259. Taoiseach, where is your plan? Where's the urgency you had in the election to deliver €200 a month childcare? Because it's not in the budget. And again, families shortchanged. Taoiseach, your broken promises have caused a lot of hurt out there. Because you don't get to raise people's expectation when you need their support and then come back empty-handed when they need yours, because that's just not good enough. And that's what you did. So, Taoiseach, I'm going to ask you here today, do you get it? Why so many workers out there are so angry with what you have delivered in the budget? And do you understand that they feel really let down by your litany of broken promises?
Well, thanks very much, Cian Corla. And before I answer that question, I too want to take an opportunity to welcome the developments in relation to the Middle East overnight, to welcome the announcement that Israel and Hamas have now agreed on the first phase of a ceasefire and a peace deal for Gaza. We're now at a critical moment where we all hope and pray that we can see an end to this brutal, horrific humanitarian catastrophe, the bloodshed, an end to the killing, an end to the famine, and also all of the hostages released. It is a day of hope for the people of Gaza after the darkest of times. And this morning, I've directed my own officials to now prepare for a substantial contribution and effort to Gaza to assist in the humanitarian effort that's going to be required immediately. And right now, in the here and now, a consignment of 1,500 tents is being loaded by the IOM in Amman today for delivery into Gaza in the coming days, including indeed 750 tents from Ireland's humanitarian stocks, and we will not be found wanting in doing more as well. Can I thank the Deputy for raising the issue of the budget, and of course completely reject the way in which he framed the budget, because what he doesn't tell the people at home is that his alternative plan proposed 23 new taxes. 23 new taxes at a cost of €3.3 billion in terms of economic impact, that it would have, and not my view, the view of anybody who can understand economics, would have risen inflation in this country by spending €4 billion more. And what happens when you rise inflation? You increase everybody's cost of living. So in your economically illiterate way of assisting people with the cost of living, you actually would have hurt people with the cost of living. And that's why when we had a general election, people rejected your economic philosophy. They said, no, thank you very much. And they also heard what we said. And they heard what Pascal Donoghue said during the general election as well. When we said, yes, we want to do measures on income tax, but we put in black and white in the programme for government that if it was a choice between doing certain things or doing income tax, we choose the other things, because we've got to keep this country safe. You've only asked me about tariffs once at Leaders' Questions, once. You never want to discuss the economy. You never want to discuss the global headwinds that this country faces. We've got to keep our country safe, and there's people watching in on this programme today, and they remember what it was like when wrong choices were made at budgets. They remember what it was like when too much money was spent. They remember what it's like when people didn't manage the country prudently as well. So what we did in this budget was set out to deliver a 5-year programme for government. And it is a 5-year programme for government. You're conveniently picking up our programme for government, saying, why have you not done everything in 1 year that you said you do in 5? That's not how it works. We need to be a little bit honest here. What we've done is we've taken steps to help those most in need. Take the issue of fuel poverty, extending the fuel allowance to 50,000 more people. We regularly discuss that issue. I'm sure you welcome that fact. Embedding a reduction in college fees permanently so students don't have to wonder what will it be this year. It's now on a downward trajectory, and that's embedded, and it's being extended to apprentices. We are going to deliver on the €200 per month per child commitment in the lifetime of this government. That's what we said we'd do. It's what you said you'd do. It's what we all said we'd do. But we also have to make sure we deliver the capacity, that we have the places. That's why there's 21 commitments in the programme for government, and we're working through them already. In this budget, we actually delivered funding to significantly increase the number of childcare places. That's really important, and I regret you didn't do that in your alternative. Reducing the cost of childcare and not having a childcare place isn't much use to anybody either. So if you actually look, and this budget's been completely misrepresented by you, look at what the likes of the CEO of Inclusion Ireland said yesterday morning when she welcomed the significant uplift in funding. Over €680 million extra for disability services, 1.5 billion more for our health services, more than 800 million more for our education system. Investing in public services, targeting the resources at those who most need them, particularly around the issue of child poverty. And I must say I was very disappointed with your lack of ambition on the issue of child poverty, when you would have done a hell of a lot less than we would have done. Looking at what you said you do on child support payments, you promised the people you do €12.50 for the under 12s. Your pre-budget submission only did 6. We delivered 8.
Thanks,
so let's get real here.
Deputy Doherty.
So, seriously, Taoiseach, do you really believe all that? Do you really believe all that? You talk about honesty. Let me read back your words. This is before the election, so maybe you don't put much credence in this. Fine Gael, wait till you hear what you've promised the people. Increase the higher tax band threshold. We will raise the point by which a worker enters the higher tax band by at least 2,000 each year. Every year. Each year. That's what you promised. You promised a plan in relation to childcare costs within 100 days. You have no plan. You have broken promise after promise after promise, because that is what Simon does. He says what needs to be said at a point in time and forgets all about it. The families of scoliosis know that, and now the workers right across the state know what you're all about. 2.5 million workers abandoned in this budget. And I put it to you, at a time when you make tax breaks available to investors, to banks, to developers, to landlords, Why did you consciously decide to leave workers worse off in this budget? That is shameful, Minister. That is shameful what you've done, and you have broken your promise. Can you explain to me why you made a pledge that you would lift the burden on workers and decided consciously that you favoured the developers,
Doherty.
the investors, the landlords over the people who are out working and building our economy?
I'm delighted that the Sinn Féin party is now in favour of actually reducing tax on work. It's something that my party found a very lonely journey over the last several years, as you opposed every time we did it. But you might read the programme for government, where it specifically says if it comes to a choice in relation to investment in public services over tax, we know which we will do. Because right around we did, because we believe. Now you're going to talk about the town planner. I'm going to use my time if that's okay, Cian. The town planner, did you hear the town planner yesterday on Morning Ireland talking about how the measures we've done will actually help build more apartments? You want to build more homes, you spend half your time objecting to them. You say you want to treat housing as an emergency, we treat it as an emergency, using the tax code to stimulate viability. 23 new taxes proposed by you, €3.3 billion more. An alternative budget that would blow our economy. The people rejected it. Thanks very much. We're going to keep this country safe. We're going to develop and invest in our public services, deliver our homes, and we will deliver our promises in that programme for government over 5 years. Just because you say it so doesn't make it so,
Deputy Alan Kelly.
Thanks, Laska Hirlik. Sorry now, Laska Hirlik, I'm going to just briefly break a tradition, but that's a sign I have up in my office, Tánaiste, that says vote no to the Healy report. It's there as a form of, I suppose, reminder to me that 25 years ago I marched through the streets of Nina holding that sign against the downgrading of my local hospital and that in Ennis and St John's. You can blame that report, by the way, everyone, for me actually coming in here. I jest, but it is an inspiration for me because the Midwest, Limerick, Clare, North Tipperary, has been discriminated against when it comes to hospital service. You look at the South East, Model 4, Model 3, Model 3. We have one Model 4. And I speak about this from personal experience. On the 22nd of October last year, I stood here, more or less given live evidence of why elderly people are afraid to go into UHL. And it was about my own father. And I had to convince him out there to get in an ambulance at his house. And he said, Alan, I'll never come out of it. He never did. He came home to die, despite the best care. But what's on my conscience is the fact that he went in there afraid. My mother is in Nina Hospital at the moment. She will not be put into UHL because at this moment in time I won't let it. It's nothing to do with the workers, it's nothing to do with the management. It's to do with the circumstances we have been discriminated against by in the Midwest. I stand here with lived experiences. A few months ago, my wife got very sick. It was 4 in the morning. I rang somebody who's working in the HSE, asked for advice. They said, go to Portlaoise. I'm about 25 minutes from UHL. Went to Portlaoise. That is what we all in the Midwest are facing. And now we have a HICRA report. Why HICRA are even doing this report is beyond me in relation to hospital services. It's as clear as the nose in my face what needs to happen. Myself, Conor Sheehan, and all the other Midwest politicians can't be another generation that lets down our area. We need a new Model 3 hospital with full emergency theatre and ICU in the Midwest. Full stop. And if that means we are going to build a unit for 100 beds to deal with capacity at the moment and then wrap a hospital around it, well then that's what we need to do. And I'm standing up here today, Tánaiste, speaking from personal experience, but also from this generation of politicians, asking you and your government, will ye and you personally be the brave person to say that we will deliver another Model 3 hospital to stop the discrimination in our region. Thank you.
Thanks, Laskin Cordo, and thank you very much, Deputy Kelly, for highlighting this issue. And in the first instance, I know you're using your personal experiences as an example, but I want to extend my sympathy and the sympathy of everybody in this House for the bereavement that your wife's experienced recently, and indeed for your own loss of your dad, and to wish your mum our very best. Can I say at the outset, I think the generation of politicians that went before us gave an example of how you botch up health reconfiguration. And I genuinely believe that the people in the Midwest were badly served by a reconfiguration that tried to change services on the promise of a better tomorrow, but didn't put the better tomorrow in first. And I think it's actually an example and a case study as to how you don't do healthcare reconfiguration. And if we're being honest, ever since then, successive governments have been trying to play catch-up in relation to a variety of issues in the Midwest, most particularly and most acutely the issue of bed capacity, but also the issue of how do you properly utilise your NINAs and your Ennis excellent hospitals that are eager to do more and wanting to do more, and I suppose now are beginning to do more as well. So look, I know at the outset you've been a very vocal advocate on this issue. I know you'll continue to be a very vocal advocate, and I accept the collective challenge that we should face to address this for once and for all together. I know the Minister for Health takes this really seriously. She will be in Limerick next week for the opening of a new 96-bed block at UHL. Acknowledge the role you and others played in relation to this too. And you know there's plans to significantly increase capacity further in the hospital. I think we all welcome that. I think what you're saying to me is that in and of itself won't be enough. I accept that too. So the HICO report, which was commissioned, regardless of your views on it, I suppose, government was briefed by the Minister on the 30th of September in relation to it, and they've outlined 3 potential options for consideration. One, you continue expanding the capacity at UHL's Doherty site. I think you do that anyway, being honest. I don't think it's either or, you do that anyway. Secondly, you extend the UHL hospital campus to comprise the existing Doherty site and another site. Or thirdly, you develop a Model 3 hospital in the HSE Midwest. Alongside these options, HIC was presented an extensive number of additional considerations, and I would say, in fairness to them, they didn't just kind of lob out 3 options. They've gone through in quite a bit of detail, let's call it the pros and cons of each of these options. So there are extensive findings. There's quite a lot of work done behind each of the potential options, and the Minister will now fully consider it and report back to government as well. But I will share your recommendation with the Minister also. I think there's a lot of logic in it. We need to drive on quickly with extra capacity. Yes, the 96 beds, that's great, but the next bit and the next bit and the next bit. And then we need to recognise that that in and of itself won't be enough. And there is a compelling case in relation to the option that's identified in the report around a new level 3 hospital for the Midwest. That needs to be, I suppose, looked into. We all know that won't happen today or tomorrow. So how do we make sure we put the capacity in the meantime? But I'll ask the Minister to keep you and colleagues from the Midwest informed on this as she deliberates.
Kelly.
Tánaiste, being honest with you, I appreciate your reply, but we need more certainty. This has gone on way too long. Your government needs to make a decision now to have a Model 3 hospital. The idea of sending everybody through UHL emergency theatre, through the emergency rooms, is downright bananas. It's crazy. It's criminal. We need to upgrade the Model 2 hospitals in Nina and Ennis, 100%. But the principle around the fact that the Midwest, with a growing population, a population that's higher than the Southeast, who have 3 Model 3 and 4 hospitals, and we only have 1. The principle around it, the decision has to be met. And I'm urging you now in reply to say, and I accept you've gone far, urging you in reply to confirm that you will do that because we need it. If it means identifying a site, putting a 100-bed unit on it and wrapping a hospital around it, because I know that'll take more years, or is it using Nina or using Ennis?
Thank you, Deputy.
We'll debate all that again. But the principle, that the Midwest is going to have a future. There's going to be ambition for it, and we're going to be able to address these issues for the people, and they will not be frightened into the future of going into just one access point through UHL. Thank you.
No, thanks, Deputy. I accept that the government will need to make a timely decision on this, and I accept that it's an issue that's gone on for very, very many years. And in fairness to the current Minister for Health, she's proactively engaging on this issue. I think the point you make about population is really key. You're correct, the population of the Midwest region is growing faster than the population of many other regions, including other regions that have a greater hospital capacity. That's absolutely factually correct. I think when you look at the three options, I don't really think there's three. There's do one obvious thing, expand capacity, and then there's a choice between two others. That's how I read it. So expand capacity, we all agree with that, do that. Then there's a question of do you further expand the UHL campus, but also develop it on another site, that's what it says, or do you, for want of a less colloquial phrase, do you start from scratch and develop a new Model 3 hospital? Both options recognise that there's going to have to be significant new healthcare capacity above and beyond the current Doherty site. And I think how quickly we can narrow down the pros and cons of each of them would be very important. So the Minister will be in UHL with the HSE, with local public representatives next week. I know she'll have an opportunity to speak with you then. And I take that point about the need to make a decision in principle as quickly as we possibly can.
Deputy O'Callaghan.
Taoiseach, the news of a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza is very welcome. At the same time, the kidnapping of 5 Irish citizens on Wednesday night by Israeli forces in international waters is utterly unacceptable. This included an elected member of this Dáil, Barry Hennigan. Taoiseach, will there be any repercussions for Israel kidnapping Irish citizens? Taoiseach, you bought the election with a litany of promises that you have broken. You promised students and their families that you would reduce college fees. They've gone up by €500. You promised that 40,000 homes would be built last year. That proved to be a complete fabrication. You promised tax cuts and spending increases, a combination that we warned was not sustainable. You never once told people that the tax cuts would be for developers and that ordinary people would be forgotten. You promised a cost of disability state payment. This would finally recognise the enormous costs of having a disability. Not only did you fail to do this, disabled people will be €1,400 worse off because of this budget, according to the Disability Federation of Ireland. Taoiseach, you promised to tackle child poverty, and yet according to the Parliamentary Budget Office, this week's budget will push even more children into poverty and will push more older people into poverty too. Taoiseach, during the TV election debate you said, and I quote, "The Fine Gael manifesto is proposing, within 100 days of being in government, capping monthly childcare costs per child at €200 per month." You've completely and utterly broken that promise. Your promises on childcare have left parents feeling betrayed. You made putting costs for childcare one of the central planks of your election campaign. You've just published your first budget, and childcare costs were not reduced by a single cent. Taoiseach, I've been contacted by parents who are at breaking point trying to pay these enormous childcare fees. One mother told me that she's paying €20,000 a year for her 2 children, and simply not sustainable. She was expecting that this budget would take some of that pressure off and reduce costs. She feels deeply betrayed by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Taoiseach, there are parents as we speak who are now asking themselves, can they afford to go back to work? And there are couples all over the country who are wondering if they can afford to have another child, because paying thousands in childcare costs is just impossible. They can't do it. Taoiseach, these families feel betrayed by you and your budget. Do you understand why they feel let down? And what happened to your promise to cap childcare fees at €200 a month within 100 days of taking office?
Thanks very much, Lieutenant Corder. Thanks to Deputy O'Callaghan. Firstly, I show your condemnation of what happens to our 5 Irish citizens. I've just received confirmation that Deputy Heenahan is back in Ireland, and I had brief message from him to that effect. It seems that Israel released parliamentarians first, so he's your constituency colleague. He's back in Ireland. The other remaining Irish citizens will be engaging with our embassy team today, and obviously we're calling for their swift release. We believe it was illegal in terms of how they were detained, and I do intend to consider how to pursue that with other counterparts. Today, though, I join with you in welcoming the very real live prospect of a ceasefire, and also now the fact that the United Nations has talked about there being enough food in the region to feed the people of Gaza for 3 months. If we can just get that in and get that in urgently, and our aid people will be endeavouring to assist on that. Look, can I just say in relation to college fees, in relation to many issues, we were very clear during the election campaign that we were moving back to a one annual budget process. That meant that the one-off measures between September and Christmas were going to be replaced with an annual budget, and that we were going to seek to embed permanent, sustainable, affordable cuts to a number of areas, including education, the cost for business, and a variety of areas. The measure we've taken on student fees is the first instalment of 5, and I remain absolutely committed to the very strong views I have in relation to the cost of education and college fees, and we intend to build on that further in the time ahead. Also, decisions we made, like extending the renters' tax credit, which was due to expire this year, extending it at a cost of €350 million a year, will directly benefit and help students. I know we have different views in relation to the measures we've taken around apartments and tax. I appreciate that fact. I do believe it's an important viability measure, and we'll see who's right in time. But we've listened to a lot of people in terms of the viability gap. We've taken a number of measures to try and close that gap, because there are tens of thousands of apartments with active planning permission today that aren't being built, and we need them built, and we all want more housing supply as well. In relation to disability, the Minister for Social Protection has been clear that he's working on developing a cost of disability payment. We'd like to see that in place for the next budget. This year's budget did see, though, objectively a step change in the investment in disability services, and that's been recognised by the likes of Inclusion Ireland. An extra funding of €628 million, I think, in relation to disability services by Minister Naughton and Minister Foley is an important step forward and will make a real difference. And on the issue of childcare, we have taken a number of measures. The commitment was to produce a plan within 100 days. Always these were going to be done as part of the budget. It's absolutely what I said in the manifesto. And I talked about it an awful lot. And every party in this Dáil gave that commitment, and we stand by that commitment. But we have outlined a record budget for childcare, €1.5 billion. The National Childcare Scheme is now funded for an additional 35,000 children next year. There's a 14% increase in the number of children benefiting. In the coming months, the Minister will set out plans for a new maximum fee cap set from next September. That will benefit people with the cost. This will reduce costs for families paying the highest fees. That's where we should start. The Minister and Minister Dillon have signed off on a 10% increase in the minimum rate of pay for educators that takes effect next Monday, helping ensure we have people working in childcare facilities to mind our children, to educate our children. There's funding also for further pay increases for the staff next year as well. And we extended the back-to-school clothing and footwear payment to preschool for the first time ever, benefiting the children most in need, along with a range of childcare measures. But the commitment remains, and the commitment will be delivered.
Honestly, I think you know well that most people don't read every word in a manifesto. They do listen, though, to what you say in an election TV debate. And this is exactly what you said and you told the nation in the TV election debate. I'll quote it for you again. You said, the Fine Gael manifesto is proposing, within 100 days of being in government, capping monthly childcare costs per child at €200 per month. And then you went on to talk about what you're going to do on college fees. You didn't talk about roadmaps or anything else. That's what you told the people. Now, if anyone listening to that would realistically expect that you would, at least in the first budget, do meaningful things to reduce childcare fees, if not what you actually said in the TV debate. But you did neither. You neither did what you promised people in the TV debate, nor have you done anything to reduce childcare fees. So can you not understand why people are really disappointed and betrayed by you now, in terms of what you said to them during that election debate, giving them the impression, the very clear impression, that within 100 days of office you're going to act to get their childcare fees down? Are you going to apologise to them? And when are you actually going to act to reduce childcare fees and actually not break your election promises, which you've just done?
We're already acting. That's why, and it's important parents know. And if you're saying parents don't follow this closely, I completely disagree. But let parents watching know this, that the budget we just delivered provided funding for 35,000. So you say people don't read manifestos in detail. People watch these things very closely. The Irish electorate are sophisticated. 35,000 funding for 35,000 additional places, a cap to be put in place for next September for those with the highest fees, extending the footwear and clothing allowance to children in preschool for the first time ever, which I'm sure is something the Social Democrats must support but didn't fund in their alternative budget. They do listen to what people say in elections. They listened when your leader promised that you'd have VAT 9 for the hospitality sector, and you walked away from it. Then you walked away from it because you don't believe cafes in my constituency, cafes in Greystones and Delgany and Bray, deserve the VAT cut that you promised them during the election and that you're walking away from now. Small businesses.
Order, please.
I can produce the image. I can produce the image. You're going to vote against a measure to help jobs in towns and villages across Ireland, and I don't think that was a very good thing to do.
Deputy Seamus Healy.
Cian, can I respectfully ask you to reflect on the decision to reduce the VAT rate for the hospitality industry? On mature reflection, you and your government might reverse this totally baseless and unbelievable decision. The state is proposing to gift millions of euros to a very small number of very large and very profitable businesses. Could I suggest, Taoiseach, that your government fell for a fierce lobbying campaign that is effectively a scam? There's no crisis in the hospitality industry. Small local cafes and restaurants have a legitimate case for support, but the main industry is thriving. The facts speak for themselves. Profits in this country between 2019 and 2025 are up by 72%. 73% of small and medium enterprises have reported making a profit higher than pre-COVID years. Employment also is up. Hospitality is up by 6.8%. The national figure is 3.5%. It doesn't look like a crisis, Taoiseach. There are 15,370 businesses in food and beverage services. 99.8% of these employ less than 250 people, making up 85% of the turnover. So what we have is the state subsidising a very small number of very large, very profitable businesses. Like, for instance, McDonald's, profits up 17% to 42.4 million, gain of 20 million. Supermax, profits up 28% to 43.6 million, gain 12.5 million. Domino's, 280 million Irish turnover, gain 12.5 million. Krispy Kreme, gain 635,000 euros. Compass Catering, 130.4 million turnover, gain of 5.8 million. Sodexo, profits up by 44%, gain of 5 million. Taoiseach, those 6 large companies share 54 million of a windfall gift from the government. In a country where we have 630,000 people living below the poverty line, including 190,000 children. Taoiseach, will you accept that the government has, let's say, made an error of judgment, or a miscalculation, or even that you were misled, and reverse this totally unnecessary decision and bring forward a targeted proposal to support small local cafes and restaurants with moderate turnover?
Thank you.
Thank you. So no, I won't accept that at all. I'll accept that we did what we promised the people we were going to do in the general election. And there's not too many of us in here, and I include myself in this, there's not too many of us who've had to lie awake at night and wonder how they're going to pay the wage bill. There's not too many of us that have to wonder that if they get sick and can't run the cafe, where their income is going to get. There's not too many of us who've had to worry about the insurance costs for running the small businesses, few of us. But in general, what people in here come in is they come in with good ideas of how they're going to come up with new policies that are going to increase the costs on small and medium businesses. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, but it's not the politics we practice. The services that we fund in this country, education, health, social welfare, pensions, carers, your salary, my salary, they're all funded on the back of people who run businesses. And breaking news, enterprise is a good thing. Creating profit is a good thing. Employing people is a really good thing. We have a very different economic ideology, and I'm not going to debate that with you today in the 2 minutes available to me. But 75% of the businesses in the hospitality sector, as you rightly say, employ less than 10 people. And if I walked around your constituency with you, and I'm happy to do that sometime, it would be a brave politician who'd stand on the shop floor of the cafe or the restaurant or the pub that's opening to do a bit of lunch for the local community and tell them that everything's flehulock, everything's grand, don't worry, you don't need the bit of assistance. You know how European VAT,
Deputy Healy.
just allow me help. No, it's not about too much. Just to be very clear, Deputy, in case you haven't read your alternative budget, you proposed this as well. So Sinn Féin are in favour of this, so you agree with us on this one. So the VAT 9 is something supported by your party as well, Deputy, so thank you for your support on that. But Deputy Healy doesn't support it, and that's his right. We think on balance this is the right thing to do. There's 191,000 people in this sector employed directly. There's 20,000 businesses. And yes, you're right, some of them are large businesses, that's true, and that's the same when you introduce any measure. 75% aren't. Only 0.4% are classified as large companies. And even the large businesses, heaven forbid, create jobs as well. In every town, in every city, in every village, good jobs, and often those jobs that help lift people out of poverty, because the best way you lift people out of poverty is to get them a job as well. Many of the large companies that I've heard mentioned in this House in recent days are franchises. They're run by Irish people, they're Irish owned, and yet again, they create jobs. Too many people in this House are taking job creation for granted. I remember when I first got elected to the Dáil, it was hard to get a job in this country. We're back at full employment. We've got to make sure we back businesses, reduce their costs, reduce their cost base, and this is a practical measure. And we're not reducing it for a year or two. It's a permanent reduction to say to businesses across the country in the hospitality sector, we have your back, we're reducing your cost base, and now drive on and keep those jobs and grow those jobs in towns, villages, right across this country.
Deputy Healy.
Taoiseach, your government's proposed to spend €681 million on what is a clearly unnecessary and wasteful tax cut. And at the same time, you raise tax on the PAYE workers, you renege on your commitment to abolish the means test for carers, you renege on your commitment for a weekly cost of living disability payment, you cut all cost of living supports in the budget, no second tier of child benefit to tackle child poverty, no maximum €200 per month childcare cost. Very profitable fast food giants are benefiting at the expense of poor children, carers, persons with disabilities and PAYE workers. Taoiseach, does this government have the political will and indeed the good sense to reverse this decision, to stop paying hugely profitable multinational organisations and bring forward a targeted scheme which will support local cafes and local restaurants with moderate turnovers?
Thanks,
have you the
Deputy Healy.
good sense to do that, Taoiseach?
Taoiseach.
Well, we're not going to agree on this, so no, the government doesn't intend to reverse a commitment the government gave and the commitment the government's delivering on, but it does need to be seen in context, because this measure is an important measure. It's an important measure to back businesses, back jobs, back regional Ireland, back rural Ireland, but it's also just one of a number of measures, because the budget allocated a hell of a lot more to childcare, to disability, to education, to health than it has to this measure as well. And in addition to that, we have taken very important measures to protect those most in need. The minimum wage will increase for 200,000 workers. All workers will now have an automatic entitlement to the pension as their auto-enrolment begins. We're continuing to drive down the cost of education. We're moving towards the abolition of the carers means test, and I reject out of hand what you said in relation to that, because we took the first step in this budget with an increase in thresholds to €1,000 for a single person carer and €2,000 for a couple. So please don't mislead carers. Family carers deserve to know the truth, and that is the truth. We've frozen VAT at 9% on gas and electricity for the next 5 years, and we're making sure an extra 50,000 households across the country will benefit from fuel allowance. We're extending the renters' tax credit. We have the back of Irish people, we have the back of businesses, but crucially, the measures in this budget most proportionately favour the most vulnerable in our society, and that's the way it should be.
Understanding order.